is the Elevated Grapes Podcast.
Elevated Grapes Podcast.
With your host, Sethee.
Your host, Sethee.
And stylist, Rashi Bindra.
It's time to get started.
Let's talk fashion, shall we? Welcome to Elevated Grapes. I am your host, Sethee.
And I am stylist Rashi Bindra, and today I get to do the guest introduction. That's really cool.
There's a first for everything.
There is,
Yeah.
and this time I get to introduce someone.
I have a little score sheet here, so I'm watching and marking you as you go along this intro. Just a heads up.
Oh, damn it!
I'm joking.
Okay, you are a professional host, so thanks for the pressure there. But so I'm very excited to announce one of my dear friends and someone who I got to meet this year through very interesting circumstances, and we will get into that, but I think we had a very great energy with each other. So I'm very excited to have Shayla Vaughan on our podcast. She is a holistic nutritionist. She is a yoga teacher, and she's also an anxiety coach, which we will get into how that came about. I've seen the journey. I've seen her glowing since I've met her and from now. So Shayla, welcome, and we'll jump into those details in a little bit.
Oh my goodness, thank you. Rashi, that was beautiful. It's like you've done it before. That was perfect.
Right? How come she was so stressed?
I'm always stressed.
Okay, I can help with the stress next time, don't
Exactly.
worry.
There you go, exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you for the warm welcome.
Well, it's all true stuff. So, you know me. I like to speak the truth bluntly out there. I don't sugarcoat things. That's not changed about me at all.
So Shayla, we like to always start with allowing our to speak a little bit about their journey. So I'd love to hear your journey a little bit for ourselves and the benefit of our listeners, just how your world came about to what you're doing today.
Yes, yeah. So I originally started my life and my journey in broadcasting and film. I wanted to be Oprah. This is literally like, people who've heard this story are going to be like, we know Shayla. I wanted to be on television, but it's because I wanted to help people. So I've always wanted to like have these connections with people just on a large platform. So I went to school for broadcasting and film. And then shortly after graduating, I was like applying to places. I was about to become an adult. I was like making my way in the world. And then in July of 2013, my mom died unexpectedly. And it was this transition time where I wasn't going back to school. I didn't get my footing and I didn't get a job, and I didn't have work to go back to. And I was like, to say my world was turned upside down is such an understatement, but it's just the easiest way to explain it. And so I was really lost. And so my sister at the time was working next door to a yoga studio. And so she was like, they do this thing, it's called like energy exchange. Like, why don't you come in and like offer just to tidy up a couple hours a week, and then you get free yoga in exchange. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever, you know. And so for months I would go, and that was the only time I left my house, was literally 4 hours a week for probably 5-6 months, just to go to clean up and not actually practice yoga. And I fell into a really dark place. I was like, my anxiety was through the roof. I physically couldn't drive on the road for longer than 10 minutes without having panic attacks and pulling over. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating, or if I was eating, it was complete junk food. I was drinking a lot. It was not a pretty scene. It was really, really bad, and it was getting really detrimental. And I remember one day in like January 2014 looking in the mirror, and I didn't even recognize myself. And it sounds really cliche, but it was like my hair was falling out, my skin was a different color. I had gained probably 30, 35 pounds. And it was not cute. And so I was like, I need to make a change, or I was like, I don't feel like I'm going to be alive much longer. And so I made a point to just take one yoga class a day. And so that's all I did. If that was all I did every day, just once a day, that was enough. So I made this point to just go to yoga every day. And so I started to practice. And so I started to move my body, and of course I started to physically feel good. It was hot yoga. I was sweating a lot. I was like, hey, cool, great. But with that also came this like craving for healthier food. Like I literally would be in the grocery store looking at kale, being like, this looks tasty. And I had never craved like dark leafy greens or vegetables or fruit. And so I was wondering what this was, because I knew I was moving my body, but I didn't understand what the connection was with why was I able to sleep? Why was my head, my brain physically feeling clearer and lighter? I could think, I could sleep, I could drive on the road. I was eating better. What was that? And then it was introduced to me, this mind-body connection. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so that was like my first conscious awareness of the mind-body connection. And so from that day on, in 2014, I was like, yoga saved my life. It changed my life. And I want to do that for people. And so I did my teacher training, and then I went back to school in that year for holistic nutrition to really just mold my two passions together of being able to change the world from the inside out, with yoga and nutrition and wellness.
Well, it seems like also the combination of the two, they fit hand in hand as well, right? If you're gonna be a strong yogi, you have to also have your nutrition health in, because it balances.
Yeah. It's funny. Nutrition. I mean, I feel like nutrition should kind of go with every industry.
I
But
agree.
yeah. But it is funny because so yes, they totally go so hand in hand. And I think that we need to bring more awareness to how important food is, because you can be physically really buff and fit, but not necessarily healthy, right? So like,
Internally you could be a mess.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I mean, even just from a mind perspective, like and sorry if I'll let you speak to this, but even from a mind perspective, if you're you're practicing the art of yoga, which it's an art and a science. Like there's a lot that goes into it and to really delve deep and understand it. But on the same side, I mean, you're having burgers and fries every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, that balance and being able to be the best in the yoga world and to transform that art into something meaningful, you're not going to get the true impact of it. Like I think having that balance of the mind and body as part of that growth is important.
Yeah, 100%. And actually in yoga, having a clean diet is actually part of the yogic
Absolutely.
lifestyle. Yeah. So it's again, it's such a cliche, but yoga and wellness really is a lifestyle. And I'm also kind of on this mission to make that known, because in our world now, or like in our Western world, we're so focused on what we think yoga is, and we just limit it to what it looks like on a yoga mat and like what someone can do.
You're so right.
Yeah, like it's like we just associate yoga with being a pretzel. And I want to scream at the top of my lungs, and I get it, because it's like that's what we're bombarded with. We're bombarded with pictures of yogis doing really crazy, intense things with their bodies physically. But there's 8 limbs in yoga. So physical posture, asana, that's one limb. That's one. And like in the Yoga Sutras, which is like a huge book on yoga and yoga philosophy, there's literally one paragraph about physical posture in the whole Yoga Sutras. It doesn't even have a full page. Like, and so it's so interesting to me that, I mean, I guess it's not interesting because I understand it, but it's definitely something that I want to bring more awareness to, and how being a yogi, you don't have to call yourself a yogi, but being a yogi isn't limited to your mat and what you can do with your body. And if you're breathing, you're actually doing yoga.
So help to break that myth a little bit for us and for our listeners. Talk to us about totality of yoga entails. You just mentioned and you're right, because the mainstream or the person who's not involved in that world, their perspective is it's the human being in the mat. Like that's it, the pretzel. Like that's exactly what everyone envisions. So talk to us a little bit more about what the full entailment of yoga actually is.
Yeah, such a great question. It's funny because I think as soon as I think like anyone is like, oh, I teach yoga. Oh, I can't do yoga. the amount of times I've heard I can't do yoga is a lot. And
I can imagine.
you know, and I just want to hug them, pre-COVID, but yeah, I absolutely thought that too, and that's what got me involved in yoga, right? Like, was the physical, that's what brought me to the yoga mat. And I think it's really important to understand that there's nothing wrong with associating yoga with physical movement. We need it. We need that movement. It's so beautiful. It's part of what yoga is. But the elements of yoga are really, like, to put it really simply, it's like being a good person and being on this path of understanding who you are so that you can better understand other human beings and understand that we are all connected in such a beautiful, powerful way. And so it's like, yoga isn't down here. Yoga is like up here. It's here. And it's like, it's this ongoing journey. It's just, it's evolvement. And, yeah, so I mean, like, there are so many different sections of it to get into within the world of yoga. But for me, if I just sort of put it simply, it's really just being a good person. And like, that's what yoga kind of teaches you. And it's really about being able to understand yourself. This is like how I would say it too, is being able to understand yourself and see yourself and hold space for yourself so that you can do that for others. Because really, like, in a world where we have compassion for ourselves and we can have compassion and hold space for that for others, like, wow, what a wonderful world this could be.
That's sorry, go for it.
What I was gonna say is that, and I think that's the challenge, is that it's portrayed in such a specific manner. Like, I mean, to a lot of people, yoga is the one class they do at LA Fitness or Good Life during the week. I don't dumb it down to that, but that's really what it is. As if you treat it like it's supposed to be a lifestyle, which is supposed to be. If you've ever been to, like, to go into the depth of what yoga actually is, like you just mentioned, like you talked about it at a high level, the mind and body balance of what yoga actually is. Body is a significant part of it, but it's not the only part of it. The mind balance and being able to immerse yourself in yoga is equally, if not in some instances, more important. So what would be the, in your perspective, like, to someone who's interested in it, like, how do they get involved or immersed in that and learning more about just the actual what yoga is outside of what mainstream tells us it is?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many resources online, thankfully. I would say, yeah, I mean, if someone is interested to just learn and expand their knowledge on yoga, I would begin with, like, just going on Google, to be totally transparent. Like, it's super simple. It's right there. Just if you want to learn a bit more about it, yoga philosophy, right? But to take that a step further and get to a class, I would say connect with a teacher. Find a teacher that you can resonate with. Because this is the thing, if you already have the curiosity to want to learn more about yoga in a deeper way, chances are you'll probably attract a teacher that will teach you more about the philosophies of yoga. So, and that's how I've been. Like, I just have been drawn to, like, I have like one favorite teacher that I have in the whole world, and she's taught me so much about yoga and the philosophies of it. But I didn't know that that's what she was doing at first. It just that's just what happened. But I would say, yeah, I mean, like, I would just dive into a little bit, because it can get really heavy. Like, there's a lot of stuff when you start to read about, like, yoga philosophy. There's a lot to it. So it can be a lot for someone to just kind of pick up and read, like the Yoga Sutras, right? But I would honestly just, like, explore a little bit, maybe watch some YouTube videos, just to make this realistic, because I'm not going to say go pick up a book and read it, because
Absolutely.
people might not do that, right? I'm a very realistic yoga teacher, I like to say.
And that's something I can definitely attest to, because I've done your online yoga classes, especially during COVID, like early COVID times. I would join in the Zoom classes, and even afterwards when I got your program, because for some reason I can't remember now why those Sundays I did not join in live. But anyways, and that's what I noticed about you is you're very real. That expectation of being a pretzel is not there, thankfully, because I'm by no means any good at yoga. I just like how I feel after it. But it's also you are bringing in that philosophy about connecting your mind to your body and then how you feel after that. And I will say that whenever I like the more I have worked out, especially done things like yoga, during this time, I've automatically wanted to eat better, drink less, and once in a blue moon, I'll have like that entire day where I'm eating junk food, and that kind of happens to be today. But overall, like I can't handle that level of alcohol and eating crap like I used to, even like in February of this year. Like just there's so much change that happens to your body when you literally start treating it with like care and compassion. And that was going back to my point that I wanted to bring up. I love that you mentioned yoga helps you in self-compassion, because yes, we have compassion for others, we have compassion for our friends, but we never almost have compassion for ourselves. Like it's like we have to really push through that either guilt or shame or whatever those feelings come up, and saying that I need to treat myself the way I would treat my friend, with that same love and concern.
Yeah, I think that's so great. And it's something that we need to work on, just in general, right? It's such a big thing for us to understand taking care of ourselves. We don't understand it. And this is the thing, before I move forward with speaking on this, this is actually something that I've kind of more recently really started to think more about, and been more mindful about this, because while when we teach self-compassion and self-love and self-care, which happens a lot in the world of yoga, like we talk a lot about self, which we need, but getting more into it, I've also realized that's a very individualistic type of mentality. And while we need that, we also do have people from communities and cultures that are from collectivist communities and cultures, where they don't necessarily value self-love and self-care. So that's kind of, there's like sometimes a little bit of a disconnect when it comes to talking about self-compassion, because they're like, it just doesn't necessarily resonate with them. And so I've had to make this shift within my own awareness of being a teacher, because for me, I can't sit here and say that I want to help the world and change the world, but I'm only catering to like a certain population, like a smaller amount, right? So where was I going with this? Yeah, so I'm just like, yeah, to make this more realistic. But yeah, like, so self-compassion is so important. But I think that we also, I've also learned to reword it a little bit. And depending on where I'm teaching and who I'm teaching and working with, might shift that dialogue and that language about it. But really what it comes down is, it's kind of just being mindful. Because really when you're mindful, so like scrap self anything, when you can bring mindfulness into your practice and into your body, the more mindful you are, just naturally, the more space you can hold for yourself. And then that is self-love, without labeling it like that. So mindfulness, it's such a broad word, but there's a lot in it. And there's a lot of there's a lot of strength within mindfulness and change within mindfulness. And the more mindful you are, yeah, then you start to notice how your body actually feels. And then you want to eat the things that make you feel good, because you know what makes you feel good, and you have the awareness of what makes you not feel so good. So it's like developing that self-compassion and self-love, just under the umbrella of mindfulness.
Mindfulness is a very interesting concept on its own. It's such a huge topic, which I don't think a lot of us truly understand, and b spend enough time on. Just life kicks in, every day. There's things that we focus on that are taking away from just mindfulness as a concept that we should be focusing on. So talk to us a little bit about, for you, that journey of making that a part of your day to day and making that a part of your lifestyle.
Yeah. It is. Mindfulness is a huge topic, and this is another area where I like to be real and making so because it's one thing to teach mindfulness and breath work under the umbrella of being in a calm, collected, peaceful yoga studio, or even virtually, right? Like for 60 minutes, it's like, yeah, that's wonderful. Like I can center myself, I can ground myself, I can be mindful for 60 minutes. That's great. But then what happens when life happens, Shayla? Like how do I implement mindfulness? So that's what I like to teach. And I'll also just say, I actually think that yoga happens 99% of the time off of the yoga mat. So that's real life is where yoga happens. And so how I've implemented mindfulness, and this looks different for everyone. There's never a one size fits all for anything. And so mindfulness doesn't need to look a certain way. Because sometimes I think, just like with yoga, we think yoga is physical, it's on our mat. Same with mindfulness. I think that with mindfulness, we think that mindfulness is meditation a lot of times. And we sit on a pillow and we cross our legs, and like that is mindfulness. That's being mindful because I'm meditating. Well, no, mindfulness is just deliberately paying attention. So you can bring meditation and you can bring mindfulness into any activity that really is like, when you're just in that state of flow and you're cooking or you're walking or listening to music, like it doesn't have to be silent, but you're like, nothing else in the world matters. Like that is your mindfulness. That's your mindfulness. That's your flow. That is your meditation. So for me, yes, yoga just so happens to be when I can be mindful, but same with cooking. Cooking and baking for me is like, I love to be in the kitchen. I love food. And I love sweet treats. So like, I love just like playing around, and like time just flies by.
You and I will get along very well.
Yeah, I know. If this was real life, I would have come. Treats would have been good. Oh, my goodness.
Okay,
I'm all about desserts.
So we know when we have to meet in a social distancing manner, where to go and meet, and how to learn mindfulness and do yoga and get some treats as well. You get the treats, I'll get the cooking because I like salty stuff. So I'll get the savory stuff, you get the desserts. We're set, Shay. We're set.
And we can do a mindful eating exercise.
Exactly.
Yes, okay. So I'm gonna jump in here. Is the first time I met you, it was on a group call for a program that we both were in. And then we had our one-on-one, and you were teaching us, you were teaching us and guiding us how to mindfully eat. And for me, that was just so different. I was like, how do you eat mindfully? Like, I'm counting how I'm chewing my food and swallowing and understanding that, and then to start implementing that in your daily life, because you're with people, and again, this was pre-COVID when we were going out and all of those things. How do you do that outside? And then obviously COVID happened, and then you learn to adjust and everything. But I found that to be very interesting. So I want you to shed light a little bit on the actual concept of mindful eating, because I think that makes a huge difference no matter what industry you are in.
Yeah. Mindful eating is, listen, we can't mindfully eat every single meal. It's not realistic. Sometimes we're starving. We just want to eat the after 8 chocolate. But before
someone just let out a little secret about one of her favorite treats.
Oh yeah. That's like for sure. Anything chocolate mint, like please. It's like it's gone in 5 seconds. But so I'll say 2 things because what I hear is like, how do we do any sort of mindfulness when real life is happening? So I'll touch on that. And also mindful eating. So mindful eating, this is like such a great way to start a mindful practice, because it's combining something that you can love while practicing being mindful and being just aware of what's going on. And so this can be like, you just have one meal, and the way that you eat it, you eat it in silence. So maybe like there's no one around. Take 30 minutes to complete this meal. So like, let's say it's soup. You sit down with it and you start to really pay attention to you, like from the act of you physically picking up the spoon, like notice the texture of the spoon. Like we don't even notice like our utensils. We don't even notice any of the steps between food in our mouth. Like we don't think about it. So think about it. Like pick up the spoon, smell, like engage your other senses, smell the soup. What do you smell? How does it smell? Get excited about it. Slowly like put the spoon in and like take a bite, like a potato, put the spoon back down, chew, minimum 15-20 times, and then swallow, and then repeat that process over. And yes, it will take a long time to finish the soup, so maybe go with a cold dish. But you'll notice how good the food will taste. First of all, it will, like, honestly, it could be the most simple meal and it'll blow your taste buds because you're just like, whoa, you're paying attention to every little detail and you can't wait for the next bite. But you're like practicing a little bit of restraint with it. And then second, you'll also notice that you actually will probably get more full a lot quicker. So you'll be more satisfied with less food. And not that that necessarily needs to be a goal. That's not what I mean. But just to bring awareness of like, oh, well, how often do I actually just eat because there's food in front of me? Or how often do I eat because I'm actually hungry?
So I'm just going to interject here just for one quick second. Starter, I challenge you to eat those Thai curry the Thai curry masala noodles that you love so much very mindfully. Take a video of that. I will pay you $100. There you go. I'm putting this out on the podcast.
I'll literally be eating for 3 days because it's so good. So, but Shayla, I want to touch on that. I think that's that specific type of attention or mindfulness in that one task you described. If you transpose that out into anything else we do in life, like, I mean, everything let's just take even everyday routine things like driving to and from work. If you take that exact same experience you explained with eating a bowl of soup and translate that over to driving to and from work, I mean, a lot of us do that every day so routinely, and it's almost like sometimes I'll drive to work, I'll get there and I'll be like, who did I pass? What just happened? What did I see? Anything? Like you're so you're in the automatic zone, and just you fly through and you don't even realize what's going on around you. It's like, how many cars did I pass? Did I take the right exit? And all of a sudden you're at work and you don't even realize. So I think slowing down and concentrating on each individual thing that you're doing in life that is almost routine, or that is that, you do almost second nature without thinking, because each of those independent tasks or activities, let's use the driving to work example that I was just talking about. You could drive to work one day and the next day may seem exactly the same. But if you're actually paying attention to what's going on around you, they're two totally different drives, even though it's the exact same route. And I think that for your soup example, you could have the same exact bowl of soup, but the experience you have on the Monday eating it versus the experience you have on the Tuesday eating the exact same bowl might be completely different.
Yes. Yeah.
And that to me is mindfulness. I think, like, if I'm describing myself correctly.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's not even about, because I think a lot of people get worried about wanting to be perfect right away and like, oh, well, I have to be mindful for an hour or 60 minutes every single day. And then it's like, well, again, that's not realistic necessarily, right? So to make mindfulness, because to hit on your point about driving, I actually think implementing mindfulness in routines that you already do every single day is where you can start to develop a stronger practice. So it's like brushing your teeth. Just be mindful brushing your teeth,
perfect,
right?
Yes, perfect example.
And so when it comes to mindfulness, it's dose dependent. So I actually recommend, and there are studies on this, but it's actually quantity over quality, which is not what we're used to hearing, but but that's what it is. So it's like it's going to help expand your mindfulness and your capacity to be mindful if you can just do it 1 minute a day. We don't need an hour. Why? No one has an hour for everything, right? Like, that's fine. Be mindful for 1 minute and then 5 minutes. And from that, and make it every day though, right? And then from there, then you start to, and like maybe it's just 1 minute of a drive, right? It doesn't have to be the whole drive, but
Right.
yeah, but it does, it absolutely, same drive, like, but totally different when you're mindful.
So let's guys, let's take a quick break right here, and we're gonna come back and actually we're gonna expand, I think, on that exact point right that you just mentioned. There is doing things in baby steps and doses to get to a better place where you can actually do it on a larger life scale. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about that a little bit more. So welcome back. You are tuned into Elevated Grapes. We are lucky enough today to have Shayla Vaughan with us. We're talking about mindfulness. We're talking about yoga. We're talking about wellness from every different aspect. Before we left for the break, we were discussing sort of implementing mindfulness on a step-by-step basis and not trying to be overwhelming, not trying to overwhelm yourself where it's, you got to adapt everything all at one time, or trying to do an hour, or trying to do a whole day or a week, do it little by little. I want to talk to you a little bit, Shayla, about translating that into someone who's going through a challenging time in life, which can be very overwhelming. And sometimes when you're going through a challenging time in life that's very overwhelming, the thought of trying to get through that and implementing something that's going to help you get through that can also be overwhelming, right? Because it's like, oh, now I'm going to take on more. Like, I have to take on the stress that I'm dealing with, but I'm also going to take on how to get through it myself, or how to get through it with someone, and everything that's involved with that. So talk to us about the baby steps people can then utilize to help move to that transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always advertise that nothing, again, is a quick fix. So it's not that like taking a yoga class or like being mindful for an hour a week is gonna just like solve everything, right? It is a process. Healing. And so I call, even if you're going through stress and anxiety, right? I call it healing because that's just what it is, really. And so, and within healing, there's a journey. So in order to take a journey for yourself, the first step is actually being able to know where you are, which sounds really obvious, but in order to get to a point B, you have to know where point A is. So you have to be able to orient yourself, and you have to understand how you're feeling and to be able to label it. And I think a lot of times we sweep things under the rug, and we like to deny. We're in denial so much. So we pretend that we're okay. We pretend that we're not feeling overwhelmed. We pretend that we're not stressed. We pretend, like all of these things, when really our insides are screaming at us and our body is shutting down, and we're just not really functioning optimally. And we just walk around like zombies. And so you have to first know that you want something different than that. And so there has to be some sort of awareness. And so chances are, if someone is listening to this or, kind of searching for answers, they probably already have that seed planted and they're on that path of trying to get better, right? And then it's about figuring out what works for you, right? So in baby steps, it's okay, well, because this is something that I've learned with working with a lot of bodies and people. We can know something. We can know logically something in our brain that like something is good for us. It doesn't necessarily change the outcome of us actually doing it. So I can know that by working out for 60 minutes, I'm going to feel good because I'm going to be boosting endorphins and I'm going to get my adrenaline running and everything's going to be good. But does it mean that I'm actually going to do it? No. So you have to know what works for you. And you have to also hold so much space and love for yourself through the process the entire way. Because it's not about getting it right. It's just about progress. And progress is perfect, right? Like the purpose is the process is the purpose. So it's not about trying to fix things all at once. That's too overwhelming. We can't do it. We literally cannot do it. So you have to know where you are. You have to know that you want change. You have to find what works for you in wanting to move forward. So is that physically moving? And is that playing loud music and dancing? Is it a hip hop class? Is it karate? Is it yoga? Is it lifting weights? Is it running? Right? Or is it reading? Is it talking to a friend? Is it watching Netflix, right? And it's not that you have to pick one and that's your go-to, but you have to know what works for you. You have to know how to, we call it self-soothing. And so you have to know how to implement these self-soothing techniques to know how to take care of yourself, right? But that comes in baby steps from slowly learning about yourself mindfully through mindfulness. Because the more you learn about yourself, the more you can take care of yourself when you need to. If that makes sense.
It does. It totally does.
Yeah, it totally does. And again, like, I think this year has been a lot of shifts and change for like a lot of people. I think people that you and I know in common, people that we may not know personally, but, you know, we keep hearing stories and all of those things. Shayla, one of the things I have noticed, you know, with the past few months, the time that I've known you, you are so passionate about the wellness industry, and you're so passionate about really helping people to kind of, you know, live their best life in the most cleanest, healthiest way possible. But what I've noticed, you're also very passionate about helping people discover if they have unresolved trauma, if they have anxiety issues, if they have stress, and how to kind of help them overcome that through simple things like yoga, like going with the flow, like, you know, dancing and moving your body. So could you share with us how that beautiful program came about, and that like what you're doing? Because I see it on, you know, social media, I read it, I'm always cheering for you. So please share that with us.
Yeah, I love you, girl.
Love you too.
My number one cheerleader. Yeah, so I want to mention, you brought up the word trauma. So I am a trauma sensitive or trauma informed yoga teacher, and you know, trauma can be defined as the brain's inability and body's inability to cope. So really just feeling overwhelmed, which really kind of means almost everyone on the planet at some point has experienced trauma. So, and under the umbrella of trauma, then there are the symptoms of anxiety, of depression, of PTSD, and all of that. And so I wanted to create a foundation, just an 8-week foundation. Again, it's not an overnight change, but an 8-week foundation course to help primarily women struggling with anxiety and panic and stress to learn how to move forward. And you know, I know how I'm doing this work because I want to be like, I've been there. Like, I know what it feels like to be a zombie and like to actually just not even enjoy anything going on anymore in your life. Like, you're just like, you're so robotic, and our society has become so robotic, and when you become aware to how you can thrive and how simple it can be, it's not that it's easy, but how simple things that you can do to enhance your life are. Like, I just want to help everyone, because it's like, just even like drinking more water can change your life. And so, you know, from coming from a place of like being depressed and being like and experiencing my own trauma and experiencing anxiety and panic, to like trudging myself through that to this place of, and I still go through that. Like, I obviously, like, we're human, right? We have existential things come up and emotions, it's normal. But when you can learn how to equip yourself with these tools of mindfulness and movement, and understand how to bring that into the real world, can make such a difference. And so the program that I have is, number one is I get everyone to talk about where they are now. So like, let's measure it. Let's do a chart. Like, what's your stress level? What's going on? How's your nutrition? How's your movement? How's your diet? Like, let's talk about what's going on. And then I also wanted to integrate my what I'm teaching. So 2 of the weeks are yoga and movement, because that's what I do. And I want that to be a part of the experience of understanding. And I talk a lot about the mind-body connection, and how what we're eating contributes greatly to our mental health, and how important our nutrition is. And it's something that's so overlooked. And there are small tweaks that you can make into your nutrition and into your diet that make such a big difference. Yeah, and then I talk a lot about, I get into stress management techniques, and again, just being able to apply that when it's actually happening in real time, right? Because it's one thing to learn it on a screen, but I want people to learn things that they can actually take with them when it matters. I don't want to be another wellness. There's nothing wrong with wellness programs out there. I love them all, but I don't want to be just another wellness program that's like, okay, let's have some green smoothies and put a smile on. Because like, no, sometimes life is really hard. Sometimes it's really hard to wake up and to get out of bed and to get through what you're going through. So I hear you, and I want to hold space for that, and I want to be there for people in general. And it's just, I've just worked a lot with women. So for women who are battling anxiety and depression, and I want to help them thrive. I want to help people really live their best life through wellness. And it doesn't have to look a certain way.
I'm going to comment on that in a bit. I'm waiting for Sadr to give his 2 cents. But would this be something that would also open up to men? Because I feel like there's also a lot of men out there who are amazing souls and individuals who could and would benefit from, the way you have combined everything together. And I think that is, and I will start, and I will say is that I don't think you'll ever be just another wellness program or just another wellness coach, because what you bring to the table is you're combining the experiences and being real with everything, which other wellness coaches unfortunately don't always do. And like you said, it's like, here, let's all eat healthy and let's just do certain exercises and journal your feelings, and you're going to be okay. And sometimes that is not always the case. So I don't, first of all, think you'll just be just another wellness coach. I think you will be always making an impact. But do you think you'll be offering this to like the men out there in the world too?
Yeah. So I just had, I've worked with men before. I still do. And there was a man in my last program. I just noticed that, so yes, every human being is welcome into anything that I offer. I just have found that it's just this like reflection thing where women have just been more drawn to me. So it's like, I just to grab more attention, I just say I primarily work with women, but by no means is it strictly for women. It's just, that's just what it so happens to have been.
So does that mean that I can enroll in a program?
Please do.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, love this. Hey, how come you never wanted to like enroll in any of my teaching stuff?
Well, I think if I do it, it's going to be all-encompassing. It's going to be like all of your programs at one time, just because then I got to embrace myself into it. I'm very extreme. If I do something, I jump into it full-fledged.
That was very, very true.
Like if I'm working out, it's not like I'm going to do, okay, let's warm into the workout. Like I'm like, okay, I'm going hard 6 days a week. That's it. Like, there's no start up 2 days. Like I don't do that. So once I decide on
But
something.
I will say I love the fact that he's asked about your programs. I don't think in any of our conversations or guests that we've had, he's been like, so when can I start this practice? So woo, woo, there.
Well, I think you know what it is. I think when you're hearing from someone, there's a difference between hearing from someone who teaches it for the sake of teaching it and someone who believes in and is passionate about it because they've actually been through it. And especially at a time of adversity, especially when you've gone to, like you mentioned earlier, dark place, or especially when it's brought you out of a hard time, and you've used it and it's made you into maybe a better person than you were before, right? So I think that's where when you hear a story like that and experience like that, and that's where it kind of drives you. Well, this person is not just doing it for the sake of doing it. They're doing it because they know the true benefits and they know what it can do to change a person's life. I think that's what's really coming out in the conversation today as I'm listening to you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, listen, yoga and wellness is not my hobby. It's like
It's your lifestyle.
it's my
It's who you,
lifestyle,
yeah.
it's my passion. And I actually, well, it's funny. I'm actually back in school for psychology, to better understand humans and to make it even more holistic. So work and programs that I'm going to be doing are just going to be more catered to humans and to really for more effective change. So I'll probably be tweaking things as I am learning more about them anyway. But yeah, it's definitely not a side hustle. It's
Well,
my whole heart.
that's really interesting too that you're doing that, because I can only assume that in your world, working with the people that you're working with, you end up becoming a lot more of a almost like an advisor to them versus just a wellness coach, or their yoga instructor, or whatever the case, right? I think your role probably takes on a lot more responsibility to a degree, because they're probably opening up to you in a way that they maybe won't open up to some of their close friends or family members. And really, and for you to have the ability to understand that and bring that as part of your offering, even if it's not an official part of your offering of what you do, but at least to be able, from your perspective, to understand what they're saying to you as they're explaining their life circumstances.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that no one is just looking for
Absolutely.
no one is just looking for a physical one-on-one yoga practice, like just to do their yoga and get out. There is such a connection between me and a client, and or like teacher student. It's like they think that they might just want to be moving, but like as soon as you're with them, like whether it's virtual or in person, like they just open up. And there's a lot going on. There's always more to the story,
There's
and
always, yeah.
there's always more to it. Um, and so I have found myself just talking for like almost, it's like coaching for 90 minutes, sorry, when there should be movement, because it's like there's something therapeutic that they need to release, and that's their release that time instead of physical movement. Yeah, so I was like, well, maybe I should get like a real designation before I continue to just like practice psychotherapy with people. But yeah, it's there's a connection, a deep connection.
Yeah.
I love that. I really, really love that, Shayla. That's just showing. And Sauter, I know you want to ask something, but
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I definitely want to just interject here. I am looking at you as you are describing what you're doing, and I'm like, this girl is talking about this as if it's her boyfriend or her partner. It's not even like just what she's like doing, like that glow and that smile and that like, oh my God, like
Yeah,
it's almost like
absolutely.
it's the best date of your life every single day. And I think, and for our listeners, if you are not watching this on YouTube, I will say go and watch this to see the expression, because that's the type of life I think we all want to live. You want to have that fulfilling aspect of what you're doing every single day. It's not even about how big of an impact you're making, just the fact that you as an individual today can wake up and be like, no matter what's going on in my life, I'm still being fulfilled. And I think that's such a game changer that we don't realize that we need. So I just had to throw in my 2 cents over there.
Well, I think anybody that's pursuing a certain life path, and if you are naturally on your own doing things to better yourself, to do the work that you're doing for your clients or whatever, in that stage, like in, for example, your situation, like, you recognized, I'm not just their yoga instructor, I'm not just their wellness person, like I end up being, their outlet to speak with, and get their their emotions out, and have someone to talk to. And so, for you to choose and say, well, I recognize this as a part of my, you know my role with them, so yeah, I'm going to go learn a little bit more about that, so I can make sure I'm doing the best for them. I think that, and I'm extending your point here, Rashi, I think that's really what speaks to your love and passion for this. You're not just doing this as a job. Like, this is not just you're doing it for the sake of doing it, because you've heard it's a good place to be in. Like, this is something that's really innately inside you, that you're pursuing. So I know we're talking a lot about you here, and we're giving you the accommodation, but it's really shows as you're speaking.
I hope so. Yeah. Otherwise, it would have been a waste of my last 6 years. So.
It's definitely not a waste,
Definitely
Shay.
not. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely not.
Yeah. I'm always like, well, I just want to change the world. Like, no big deal. It's fine.
Well, you
I
made
say
it.
that every morning. There you go. So
Yeah,
we're good. Yeah.
and we all do it in different ways, right? Like I think, you at the beginning of the conversation, you were talking about, wanting to be in a world where you were kind of like running like an Oprah type of service, or
Show.
whatever you want to call it, or show, like whatever way you want to impact at that level. But you know that that has a benefit in one way, but the individual one-on-one impact that a person with what you're bringing to the table has, I think, goes such a far way to help people, right? Like, and because it's, again, like, and I've said it before, it's coming from an internal place. It's coming from, this is something that I've walked through and I've been through, and I've been able to see how it helped me, and I know it can help someone else. Maybe not the exact same way, but there's definitely, there's a power in here that's going to be able to help someone else. And you taking on the role of being the guide for other people to do that is, to me, it's better than being an Oprah of the world, because the impact of one-on-one, if you impact one person's life in doing what you're doing, it's a success to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's that whole idea that, when we can help one person, you don't know the impact of that, and you don't know who they can help, and that whole effect. And when we can heal one person, we really are healing collectively. So, and like, that's the
Absolutely.
practice that we do in yoga. And um yeah.
And sometimes it's not even direct. Rashi and I have spoken about this before. Like, all of us in our individual worlds, we're doing things that we love to do, we're doing things that we want to pursue, we have a passion for. Ultimately, even if you're not having a conversation one-on-one with someone, or you're helping them directly, or they're a client of yours, someone's out there watching what you're doing, and they're learning from that from a distance too, right? So it's almost like we have that responsibility, if we've chosen to do what we're doing and we want to pursue it, that there's an indirect impact on a lot of people that may not, have the courage to come up to you and talk to you about it one-on-one, or use your services directly, but from a distance they're watching, like, you know what, I love what she's spoken about here. It could just be even as simple as them listening to this conversation that we're having, and, really taken a lot from your story, and be like, I love that, she's turned her life around, she's been through something really challenging, she's taken something that meant a lot to her, made it into her lifestyle, but it came from a place of adversity initially, but she's built something out of it. That alone, as a story, or an inspiration to someone, can go a long way just by listening to this podcast. And that's not you having a direct one-on-one conversation with them. So I think in any one of us that are choosing to do something that we enjoy doing or have a passion for, I think we have to always remember that we're a role model to a lot of people, and a lot of people may be listening to us, and watching our movements and watching our activities, and gaining some inspiration from it, whether it's, even though it's not direct.
Yeah. You honestly never know. You never know who is who. With, like, it sounds creepy, but it's like, you never know who's
No, you
listening.
don't.
You never know who's watching.
You don't.
And yeah, and I think, and having a platform where people can just, like, either come to your classes or listen to you. People aren't going to say something right away about it, and not that they even ever need to say something, but people, you want to build that trust and that rapport. and you never know like what people are actually taking in. So,
Absolutely.
you know, when something does resonate with them and they tell you about it like a year later, and it's like, you said something to me a year ago, then it's stuck with them. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, you're like, what did I say? I have no idea.
I don't remember.
I say a lot. Yeah. But like, and it's also, you know, I always find like the simplest things go the furthest. Like, just it's that this is the thing, like, it's not even necessarily about words. It's about being genuine, authentic, and like in my line of work, when we could physically touch bodies, but like there's no word spoken, but like if someone is in a child's pose and it's just like a small adjustment of like me like placing my hands, just holding them, or like, you know, if they're crying and I'm just holding them, like no words are exchanged, but
Absolutely.
and it's like that's our role and our responsibility as a teacher, to hold space and to be there and to show up. And so like I don't second guess it at all. And then it's like a year later again, like someone will be like, you know, that one time that you allowed me to just cry and you just held me, like that changed the whole, like their whole week, or this or that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, wow, what? Like you would never know. And it like, obviously that's so lovely to hear, but like I don't ever expect it. And yeah, just the simplest things, like, and just even again, like I'll never forget the example of someone exactly that in a child's pose, and me just like placing my hands on them while everyone else kept moving. I kept teaching the class because it was moving, but they were just tired, you know. And they were like, thank you for letting me just rest. Like it was something so small and simple.
Right.
And to me, you know, that says a lot, that person feels guilty taking a break. Like there's so much more to it than, you know, than what we think. And so I'm like, yeah. And I'm like the number one fan of, I'm like, you want to come to class and take Shavasana the whole time? Please. Like, it's an honor. You rest, I'll do all the work. Like, just do you do what you need to do. That is your yoga. Perfect. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an energy. It's not just spoken word, right? There's an energy in there that you're working with these clients as well. A lot, like you said, a lot of your work is not going to be spoken. It's an energy shift.
Yeah. And there has to be, even when it's virtual now, there's more of an energy because they have to feel it through a screen. So they have to know that I'm there for them beyond spoken word. Because sometimes it's hard to connect with the computer and technology. Absolutely. So how, you know, you have to show up in a different way. And it's through language. It is through word, but it's like what you say and how you say it to your people, to your clients, and to your students. And it makes such a difference.
So tell us now, if people want to find out about your classes, find out more about you, where can they get you? Where do they find you online? How do they reach out to you? Share that. I mean, we'll put all of it in the description, but we also have a show that's audio only, so we want to make sure the lazy people that are listening. No, we're not calling you out, but if you're lazy and you just want to hear it, we're gonna tell you now too.
Yeah. So my IG handle Instagram is at my Shayla Vaughan. So it's at SHAYLA VAUGHAN. So Vaughan, like the city. I always have to say that. And I'll say my email address because my website is actually under construction right now, guys. But my email address is hello@shaylavaughn.com. Super simple. It's so simple.
I like that. Hello@Shayla. I like that.
Yeah.
Hello. Come say hi. Cool.
And also for those that are listening on the streaming site versus watching on YouTube, Shayla just actually drew out the @ symbol when she said her Instagram handle. It was awesome.
I'm telling you guys, this is one of the one of the episodes you have to watch. You have to watch the peace signs. You have to watch expressions. Yes. You have to watch everything. This is not a listening only podcast. This is a fall in love with Shayla podcast.
Most people just sit still.
Well, I mean, like, no, it's like, you know, you do the cute things. Like you put it the heart a couple of times when Rashi's speaking. Like, it's a lot of your expression comes from seeing you. Like, it's like the genuineness shows.
Oh, okay. I would have been more professional and cool.
No,
I would have been
amazing.
No. We're not about that life.
No. We love genuineness and authenticness.
Yeah, that's what we're about. So it's all good.
Love that. Oh my goodness.
Shayla, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation, and thank you obviously for being so open and sharing your personal story. Because I think that from my perspective at least, that was a big part of understanding why you do this and why it's so important in someone's life to adopt this sort of act. Thank you so much for being so open and sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys so much for having me here. It was so lovely. You guys are amazing.
And we're hoping that soon
you.
down the line we can have you back on the show again, share some more stories
Yes.
as your
When
as
I'm
your journey
30,
continues. Sorry.
when I'm 30, I'll be back on.
Yeah,
Big birthday.
absolutely.
That's awesome. Congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so
Happy birthday, girl.
for our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. All the information about Shayla will be in our description below. If you didn't hear it through her at signs and drawing. So do definitely check her out and reach out to her. I can tell you from this conversation, she's very open to speaking and will definitely be a good resource to connect with. So Shayla, again, thank you. To our listeners, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next week on Elevated Grapes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hey guys, thank you for watching that podcast or that video. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more of us and see some of our behind the scenes stuff, subscribe below.
Yes, hit that little red, button thingy that's over there and hit subscribe and keep following us for a lot more cool, fun stuff.
Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you soon.